Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or MOUNJARO? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and MOUNJARO. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 MOUNJARO TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
Alive on the moon, Jaro, it's on the pen alive, with your host David Knapp.
Thank you, Clap Track, and happy Thursday night, everybody. Welcome to On the Pen Live. I'm Dave Knapp, man on the MOUNJARO. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, MOUNJARO, Zepbound, that pen. That is why you are here, and we're all here to learn a little bit more about the medications that we're on, the journeys that we're on, the paths that we're on, and we're here to share community. And for my money, this is the best community in the GLP-1 space. So thank you for being here. If you're new here, drop an N for new in the chat. Let me know that you're new here. Oh, Donna with a super sticker. Thank you for that, Donna. God bless you, my friend. Put an N in the chat if you're new. Let me know that you're new here. Put a OG if in the chat if you are an OG on the penner. Thank you for being here. We're so excited. We got a great show tonight. Thursday night, it's the best night of the week. It's so good to have you all here. It's my favorite night of the week. And we got a great show tonight. We've got Tara Rothenhofer, who was a Surmount Phase 1 trial participant, here to share her story about her journey with GLP-1 medications, her 200-pound plus weight loss on MOUNJARO. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the media attention that she's gotten, the likes of Tamron Hall, Good Morning America, The Today Show. She's got a huge story to tell, and we're so excited that she's going to share a little bit about that with us here tonight on the Pen. So make sure you give Tara a welcome in the chat. We'll have her call outs when she comes on the show a little bit later on. So thank you for being here. You know, if you've been around here for a little while, you know that we've got a rhythm and a routine to this show, and we start it with housekeeping. You want mint for pillow? Housekeeping. So the first thing you got to know about housekeeping for this month is that every gift that is given, like Donna's 1999 super sticker, 10% of all the gifts are going to go to one paid member of the YouTube channel or the TikTok channel we are going to select that person randomly. The whole spirit behind it is that 10% of the gifts and the memberships that are given to me on this channel, I want to find a way to give back. I know many of you, if not most of you, pay a good amount of money out of pocket for your medications every month. We want to help somebody defray the cost of that. It's probably something we'll keep going beyond March, but that drawing will be next week on the pen. So make sure that you are aware that you got to be tuned in for that. So that is part of what's fresh. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own journey. So you know that I've been on the 12.5 milligram dose of MOUNJARO. Just took the last one that I have, and actually I'm moving back to the 10 milligram, not by choice, but because Zepbound and MOUNJARO are impossible to find. And so thankfully, my friends at Flex Care were able to spot me or find me a box of the 10 milligram until we can find the 12.5 again. So thank you to them. If you're looking for some top tier telemedicine, join flex.care is how you find them. They've got an awesome program. I mean, I'm loving it. I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm learning a lot about habits and behaviors, and just I'm hopefully going to be able to crack this code. So thank you for my friends at Join Flex. Thank you. So I'll keep you posted. There's no weight loss this past week, but I'm glad to have kind of at least kept off that first 5 pounds that kind of came off right away. And I'm hopeful for the future. Can't wait to get back up to that 15 milligram dose. Going to check in with the chat a minute. Anna, Mike, thank you for being here. Clokey, good to have you on a live. Good to have you here. Johnny, awesome. Good to have you here. You're with Flex. That's great. Tay, how are you tonight? Lil Chi, Sue the Dude. Michelle is here. Michelle will be joining us in the coming weeks for a series on maintenance. So we don't want to leave those of you who are on maintenance in the dust, even though I'm far from it. I want to be able to offer those of you who are here and in that part of your journey some valuable content. And of course, as I was sharing with the members before we went live here, there is virtually no topic that I've ever come into discussion with Michelle about that she wasn't super well versed in. And of course, herself being OG Manjarian and now in maintenance herself, I'm super thrilled for what she's going to be able to share with you all about the topic of maintenance. Just a reminder, if you're just getting in here, hit that like button. That's super important to the growth of this channel. So just that little thumbs up, it's super, super helpful. It helps YouTube know that this is worth it. And then there's a little heart button. Anytime you hear something that you like, just hit that little heart button. That helps as well. All of these things help to spread the word about On the Pen. So thank you for those who are doing that, even as we speak. Corey, our guest from last week, I hope you got to check out that show last week. Corey was a great guest. So appreciated her sharing. Of course, Sabrina was on a couple weeks before that. Thank you for being here. Natalie, Sue the Do, Lil Chi, Anna, thank you for being here. It's so good to be here with you all on a Thursday night. We're going to keep this train rolling here. We're going to talk about what's fresh in the world of GLP-1s. It's hard to figure out what to talk about, but we'll pick something. So what's fresh this week? My goodness, so much is fresh in the world of GLP-1s. There was some excellent news this past week. If you haven't checked out the podcast, hopefully by now you're aware that I have a podcast. It's not this show. It's actually a 15-minute rundown of the weekly news in the world of GLP-1s. It drops usually every Tuesday. Sometimes I get it up before then, but I'll roll the bumper for the podcast. Make sure that you check out the podcast. The link should be in the description of this video. If you go over there, please give it a 5-star rating and review. Please, that will help that thing grow. It's actually growing. We're almost to 5,000 downloads already on the podcast, and it's very new. So I'm going to give you a second to pull up your podcast app and give it a 5-star rating and review while I run the intro to the podcast.
Welcome to the Weekly Dose Podcast, your one-stop shop for the weekly news in incretin mimetic therapies, with your host, man on the MOUNJARO, Dave Knapp.
Of course, we got to roll the clap track. So hopefully you all have been able to pop over, give the podcast a 5-star rating and review. I'm getting really great feedback on the podcast. But one of the things that we covered this past week was Viking Tide. So if you thought that Viking Tide was exciting, that's a GLP-1 GIP coagonist, just like tirzepatide, right? I'm not sure what the ratio is with this one, but I am sure, based upon the phase 1 data that we have, that this is going to be a strong competitor to tirzepatide, if not better, by a good bit. So this is Viking Therapeutics, VKTX on the stock exchange. You have to check this out. They have an oral version of this medication too. And we got top line phase 1 data from the pill version where people lost up to 5% in the first 4 weeks with virtually no side effects compared to what people typically can have with a GLP-1 receptor agonist medication. So Viking Tide is amazing. So this, what we're talking about, Johnny, is the pill form of Viking Tide. VK, what is it, 2733? Somebody in the chat, help me out if you can remember. But Viking Tide, for purposes of this channel, there's an injectable version and there is a pill version. And we got phase 1 data from the pill version. So that was awesome news. We covered that on the podcast this past week. So please go check out the podcast. I give you all the information on that there. One of the other interesting pieces of news that we got into this week was we got a study that showed that Ozempic can be made for $5 a shot, basically, which is very interesting. $5 a shot. And so of course you have time. I mean, I made a short video about this, just kind of a fun, like, if they can make that for $5, why can't we get a $5 mystery meat footlong from Subway? You have to check it out. But I want to talk a little bit about that because I think it's worth a little bit of a rebuttal, maybe not a take out the trash, but I think it's a little disingenuous. I also think that the timing of that information dropping was really interesting, given that we saw Wegovy this past week receive some coverage through Medicare via that new indication about heart failure, being able to treat patients on Medicare with Wegovy who have heart failure because of the indication that we got from the information that came out of the trials, the STEP trials that came out about semaglutide. Just, every week it seems like there's great news that comes out about semaglutide. A couple things, and I'm gonna mention this for Tay's sake because she mentioned this in a live that I did on TikTok, and I think it's worth mentioning here as well. So I want you all to know that just because Medicare has added Wegovy for people with heart failure on Medicare does not mean that Wegovy for obesity universally is available, or that any obesity medication is available now through Medicare. First of all, this is select plans. It's not going to be all your Part D plans. It's going to be select plans. And I believe CVS Health was one of them, Kaiser Permanente, and then there was another one that started with an E. It escapes me at this moment. But there's a couple that have announced that they're going to add Wegovy to the formulary for those with heart failure and on their Part D plans for Medicaid. What is important, or Medicare, sorry. What's important to know about this is the battle is not over. We want the obesity medications added to Medicare, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to see the passing of the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. So TROA, the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, Tay can definitely link it in the comments over here. You're going to want to you're going to want to sign the petition to get the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act passed, because that is the paramount step to getting obesity medicine covered through Medicare. We've been talking about it for well over a year. Matter of fact, Michelle Hess was the first person that brought it up way back on maybe even the first episode that we ever did of On the Pen. And we are 59 episodes in. This is the 59th episode. Next week will be our 60th episode of On the Pen Live. And going back to our very first one, because of people like Michelle Hess who are in tune with things like the Obesity Action Coalition and just great contributors to this channel. We've been talking about it for a long, long time. And so now it's kind of blown up over on TikTok. It's kind of become a whole movement over there. So the fight is not over for Medicare. The fight continues, but this was a huge win this past week with the addition of Wegovy for the indication of heart failure. So that will be an interesting thing to watch over the next couple of years as more trial data comes out on semaglutide and tirzepatide, frankly, because they're doing these trials with tirzepatide. They're a ways out, but you're going to see sleep apnea trial data come out. You're going to see osteoarthritis trial data come out. You're going to see things for kidney disease. You've already seen some of that with the flow trials for Wegovy. But all these things are coming for tirzepatide as well. So you're going to see some extra indications added, and you will see those indications kind of be backdoor ways into these medications if you're on Medicare. But we have to fight for the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. So would be remiss without mentioning that. So there's a lot of news in the world of GLP-1s, the Viking tide, the adding of Wegovy to formularies, certain formularies for Medicare. That was huge news this past week. But the $5 pens is what I kind of got off on a tangent in. So this can be made for $5. I think what's a little disingenuous. So you saw that article come out, and I think there's pressure on these companies to reduce the cost, which we're all about. But I think context is important, and I think that it is important to know that, there are billions of dollars put into the discovery of the medications, the clinical trials of the medications. We're going to learn a little bit about the clinical trials tonight from our guest, Tara, who was part of the Surmount 1 trial for tirzepatide. The amount of cost that's involved in that is not, it doesn't even touch, right? It does not even touch, that $5 figure. I really don't believe that. But, there are trials that are subsidized by the federal government, and we pay way too much in this country. So, I think it's a great conversation to have. We are paying way too much for these medications compared to the rest of the world. We are funding the development. We're funding the trials of these medications. Should they be cheaper? Absolutely, they should. The cost of these medications should be spread out around the world. We should not have to bear the brunt of this in the United States. But I did think it was worth a rebuttal, and Cloakster had kind of a good kind of commentary on that on the little short that I did, and it was a point that was completely well taken, and I think just good context to have around that argument. Would we all like to see these cheaper? Absolutely, but we knock the system, and the system is broken. Gosh, I had some interesting conversations this week in my day job where I'm selling X-ray, and my goodness, the consolidation of healthcare in this country is a bleak thing. It is a bleak thing, and obviously the consolidation of these pharmaceutical companies is not great either. But I'm so thankful that this system gave us medications like tirzepatide, because it's changing lives, and it's giving people options, right? To treat their chronic disease. So I'm very thankful for these companies. I'm thankful for the development of these medications. I think that it would be more fair if we could spread the cost out of these and increase accessibility, especially those who need these medications the most. So that's my opining about that for the week. We're going to get into a little bit of fake news. We're going to take out the trash. That's what we do here on Thursday nights. We take out the trash. Tonight is no different. We got a fun little topic to chat about. So let's do it. Let's take out the trash. So another week has gone by, another week without Zepbound being added to the FDA shortage list. Why, you ask? I don't know. It is definitely in shortage. And I'm almost to the point where I say, let's not listen to that website anymore. Let's just listen to each other. And I'll tell you what I'm hearing everywhere I go, that if somebody is finding their Zepbound, it is because they have found a unicorn. It is extremely hard to find right now, not only MOUNJARO, but Zepbound as well. And it's not really isolated to any dose specifically. Johnny loved the $5 footlong mystery meat line. I'm glad that I can entertain somebody other than myself. It is absolutely ridiculous at this point that we don't have Zepbound added to the FDA shortage list, because it is impossible to find. That said, I do want to touch on a movement that we're trying to create here, and that's the Release the Vials campaign. So if you are making content, whether it's here, Instagram, TikTok, wherever it is, please use the hashtag Release the Vials. The reason is, we know the vials are approved for the use in the United States. We know that they were approved. They were approved at the end of July of 2023. They announced that they were going to release the vials of MOUNJARO in ex-US markets. That's exactly what they've done. They've released them in Canada. They've released them in Australia. I've even heard of some places in the European Union that the vials are popping up. We need them here. Because I think if we could start to alleviate some of the pressure on manufacturing the pens, because as we know, these pens are very complicated. These things are very complicated to manufacture. You got a vial in there that has to be filled. They have to be finished, packaged, boxed. A single dose vial is much easier to fill. They can fill hundreds of those vials to every pen, I got to imagine. And if we could just alleviate some of the MOUNJARO supply, we can save those pens for the Zepbound pens, right? Diabetics, we're already used to filling syringes. We're already used to that. So I think that it is a reasonable plea to ask Eli Lilly to release the vials. We don't know. This is my issue here, is that we're subsequently told by these companies that compounds are not a good option, that we got to be very wary of them because they haven't been clinically tested the way that tirzepatide has. And that's all, I think, fair. I think you have to make these decisions with your doctor. You should be able to trust your doctor that they know and can source where this stuff is coming from. And all that is sort of a separate conversation from this. I think what's important to know is what has not been clinically trialed. Is what it is like to bounce around on doses. What is it like to go up to 15, back to 10, up to 12.5, back to 7.5, down to 5, back up to 10, because that's what you can get. That's what's happening right now because people can't find their medicine. So you've got people bouncing around on all of these different doses. And I think it's a reasonable plea to ask of Eli Lilly to simply release the single dose vials of MOUNJARO in the United States to help alleviate the supply, and perhaps even consider pulling a Novo Nordisk, as they did with Wegovy when they stopped making the starter doses of Wegovy for a little while so that they could serve the people on the higher doses, right? If you were already on the platform, so you didn't have to bounce around, they started to prioritize the higher doses for a little while until they could get caught up, and now they're making the starter doses again. I just think that these are things that I'm hopefully anticipating. I have high expectations for Eli Lilly, an absolutely fantastic company, to carry on the legacy of Colonel Eli Lilly, who was a colonel in the American Civil War, who sought to create safer and more accessible medications for people. That was his vision. That, I think, is a vision that has been wonderfully and beautifully carried on by Eli Lilly in the form of tirzepatide and other medications. And I would just ask that they do the right thing, because right now we don't know what's going to happen with people bouncing around on these doses. There is a way to alleviate some of the supply. And I would ask humbly that you release the vials, Eli Lilly. And so if y'all can use that hashtag when you're out and about on the socials, hashtag release the vials, I think that is an important campaign to keep moving forward. And I think we can all make some noise with that. So thank you all for your cooperation in that. Tammy, welcome. Good to have you here. Appreciate you jumping in here tonight on the pen. We've got a great guest, and I don't want to make her wait any longer. So we're going to bring in tonight's hot channel tonight. As I mentioned before, it is Tara Rothenhofer, and she was a Surmount 1 clinical trial participant. So you can thank Tara and her friends from the Surmount 1 trial for bringing us tirzepatide for weight loss. So please join me in welcoming in tonight's hot channel tonight, Tara Rothenhofer. Let's bring her in.
Hot channel.
Tara, thank you for being here tonight.
For having me.
Absolutely. It's so good to meet you. First of all, this is sort of the first time that we've met. And so it's nice to meet you.
Same here.
And so Tara is, she's a content creator over on Instagram, on TikTok. She's got a presence over on YouTube. So if you're not following her there, make sure you check her out, Tackling Tara. You can see it kind of scrolling in the Chiron below. The interesting thing for the community to know is that she's been a pretty high-profile member of the community. Not only is she an OG member of the MOUNJARO community, having participated in the Surmount trials, she's been featured on Tamron Hall's show. She's been featured on Good Morning America. She's been featured on the Today Show. So that had to be super exciting. Tara, tell us how you ended up on those shows.
Well, I guess, being that I started on the medication 4 years ago when no one even really knew what it was, as soon as these medications kind of started trending and people started looking for, anyone to talk to about it, they started going to Google and social media places. And before I knew it, my phone was ringing off the hook from numbers I didn't even recognize. And, I thought I was being prank called.
I'm sure you did. That I mean, what a surreal thing to be thrust into the limelight like that. What part of your journey do you think that they were most interested in, or what was it that you think kind of caught their interest and had them wanting to chat with you?
I think honestly it was because of the significant amount that I had lost, even at that point. There was so little known about these drugs at the time, and so few people known to be on them that, the initial, of course, response is, oh, it's not going to work, or, oh, no one's going to lose that much weight. And then by the time the trial ended, I had lost 132 pounds already. And I think people were just kind of like, okay, wow, maybe this really is something that's going to pick up, and gain some traction.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were one of the OGest of the OGs. At what point in your journey did you start making content? Because I can imagine if you're in a clinical trial that they probably don't want you to share a whole bunch about it online. At what point were you able to start making content?
Well, I honestly started documenting my journey from the get-go in March of 2020 on Facebook. I'm really new to the whole TikTok, community recently, but I wasn't really necessarily giving much information about the medication because, to be honest with you, I didn't know much about the medication. I knew it was called tirzepatide. I didn't know what dose I was on. They didn't really tell us anything. So I was more so just documenting my journey as far as my weight loss and inches and things like that. And I really started just doing it for me because this is a battle that I have faced my entire life. And the moment, I started seeing the weight come off, I was like, wow, I want to remember this. So, and it was something that, my Facebook, especially at the time, was really family and friends, people that have known me forever and knew my struggles and knew all the other things I had tried. I mean, you name it, I've tried it. So that was really the purpose in the beginning, was just strictly, documentation.
Yeah. So I'm so curious about the Surmount trials. First of all, thank you. Thank you. Because without people like you willing to kind of be the first ones to say, I'll do it, we wouldn't have these medications. So thank you for participating and helping to bring tirzepatide to the masses. On behalf of everybody, thank you. But what was your journey to the trial? Like how did you end up on a clinical trial for tirzepatide?
For me, I think that's the most interesting part of my story. So as I mentioned, I have struggled. I'm 48 years old. I've struggled with my weight pretty much my entire life. I did my first, quote unquote diet at 13. I was on Weight Watchers and lost like 50 or 60 pounds doing Weight Watchers. And I'm sure like most of us have experienced, I'm like, okay, well, I've got this. I can continue, these habits that I've made, and did all the things in the beginning. And before you know it, you gain the 50 or 60 pounds back and then some. And that was kind of my life going forward. So I was driving home one day from work and I hear about this clinical trial for weight loss medication on the radio. And I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds like a good idea. I need to look into that. And then the minute I got out of my car, I never thought about it again. And a few weeks later, my husband comes home and says, I'm going to do a clinical trial for weight loss medication. And I was like, what? We weren't even, we weren't in the car together at the same time or anything when we heard this. And I was like, I want to do a clinical trial for weight loss. He was like, well, here's the number, call. So I called the very next day and the trial was full. And I was devastated. I was like, so mad at him. Not really, but, I'm like so jealous that he's going to participate in this. And he started the screening process. And during that screening process, he found out that he was diabetic, which we had no idea.
Wow.
And this is at the very start of, the C word from 2020. I don't know if we know that or not, but this is this is the start of that. So being that this trial was specifically for weight loss, because he was diabetic, it disqualified him. So I literally, jokingly, I say this now, but I was like, sorry for your luck. I'm calling tomorrow. And I literally called the research center the next day and they were like, we have a ton of people waiting. Could you come down here tomorrow? And I'm literally like, I will camp out on your doorstep. So, for me, my faith has always been something very important to me. And I just know that that was God opening this door for me. And, the rest, I guess, as they say, is history. But I know that that was meant for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely identify with, just feeling like the Lord has just done some amazing things to bring me to where I'm at in my journey and the channel and the friendships and so I can definitely identify with that, feeling of just God's provision throughout the journey to get healthy and the gift really. That's why kind of like, we want Eli Lilly to release the vials, but at the same time, I'm so grateful for Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk to have put the time and effort and energy into making these medications. I've heard different interviews before where the C-level executives of these companies said nobody wanted to touch obesity medicine because they never thought that they could get payers on board, because it's always been considered a cosmetic issue, right? And not a disease issue. Can you talk a little bit for a second? And I have to take care of a housekeeping thing, but can you talk a little bit for a second about at what point you kind of discovered that your journey with obesity wasn't a journey of a lack of willpower or a character flaw or defect, but you realized that it was actually a disease? And I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Okay. Honestly, I think it took the trial and this medication to bring me to that realization, because like I said, I did struggle my entire life. I grew up with 9 brothers and sisters, was teased a lot by them, was teased and bullied really badly, honestly, in middle school and high school, called all kinds of names, and everything I tried would work for a short time and then wouldn't work. I went through a lot of things in my childhood. I lost my mother at 14 years old, and, everything in our home had revolved around food and eating and family. And, every holiday and every get together revolved around food. And so, you kind of start to just, you remember those feelings of when you're around family and you're having those, holidays and things like that, get-togethers, the food feels good. When you're sad, the food feels good. So I knew obviously that obesity it ran in my family, so I kind of always chalked it up to like, well, this is just what, this is the life I'm going to lead. This is the cards I was dealt. And so even though I tried all those other things and they would work for a short time and then not work, it was freeing, so freeing to start this medication, to have it work, and to finally know that it wasn't me, that I wasn't a failure. But truly it was tirzepatide that brought me to that realization. Nobody ever told me that before. Nobody ever validated that before. And everybody always said things like, you just need to move more. You just need to eat less. You just need to do this and you just need to do that. And I'm like, wow, I'm a pretty smart person. I'm a, successful person. Why I can do so many things. Why can I not do this? And I felt like a failure for a very long time, and so the feeling of it's not me. It wasn't my fault, was just, it really let me let go of a lot of things, honestly.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that deeply personal part of your journey. And I think that I probably speak for a good number of people who are watching and will watch this when I say that's exactly sort of the realization that I came to when I first started. And I've had much less success on the medication compared to you, compared to a lot of people on this journey. But one of the first things that I learned about tirzepatide after white knuckling it for a very long time, matter of fact, when I started tirzepatide, I had just gotten off a year of strict keto diet where I was only able to drop 7 pounds. I was able to get my A1C down, but I wasn't able to lose weight, and at least not a significant amount of weight. And when I got on tirzepatide, MOUNJARO, I sort of just told myself, like, just breathe, just take the medicine, let the medicine do its thing, and stop white knuckling it and beating yourself up, because I was beating myself up physically by putting myself through extreme diets. I mean, 20 years of it, 20 years of roller coaster extreme. For me, it was keto. Like for other people, it was Weight Watchers or what have you, or all of them, right? I mean, some people could just go down like a laundry list, and I did that, and I certainly did all those too at some point. But the thing I kept repeating, the mantra I kept repeating when I would come on and I would do my weekly updates on MOUNJARO on my YouTube channel, is that all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I felt like I could eat normal people food. I would eat normal people portions, and I would feel normal people full. And I was losing weight. I wasn't doing anything. The medicine fixing what was metabolically broken was naturally helping me to just shed the pounds. And so that was a light bulb moment for me, that like, it was very validating for me, because I had said to my wife over the previous couple of years, in hindsight, the years that thank you, Michelle, for the super sticker. Thank you, Sue the Dude, for being a member for 13 months. I appreciate y'all. I told her something's wrong with me. Something like I'm doing everything I can. I'm lifting weights. I'm restricting calories. I'm like this, because, given the formula that I've always been given, I should be shedding weight, and I'm not. In hindsight, I was diabetic and I didn't realize it, which is a huge contributor to having your body just fights against it with the insulin resistance and everything. But all that to say, I mean, although I've struggled, and I think what I ultimately need is probably a combination of higher medication, stronger medication, or perhaps even bariatric surgery. But to know that when everything is properly regulated within me, it does work. I can lose weight, and there's not some sort of character deficiency. And I beat myself up for so many years over, even though I was trying everything I could, I just felt like such a failure. And so that validation has been just a huge part of not only my weight loss journey, but just my journey in my own self-worth and not beating myself up.
Yeah, I can totally relate. And I really feel like I have grown so much as a person throughout this experience, because, I've always been someone who likes to help other people. I mean, that's just always been, kind of my thing. So originally, of course, I set out to do this to help myself. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I actually lost my oldest sister to obesity in 2018. So, for me to even do this trial was huge, because I'm not a person who even takes Tylenol if I have a headache. So for me to just say, sure, I'll sign up and be a guinea pig, it was like, oh my gosh, people literally was like, who are you? You don't do stuff like that. But I really felt like, I felt like God led me to this. And if he led me to this, he was going to make sure I was okay. But I also felt like, I don't have any other choice. I don't know what else to do. I was very active. I ate, did I eat then as good as I eat now? No, but I ate better than what everybody thought I ate. Everybody assumed that I ate McDonald's all day, every day, and stuffed my face with pizza. And that wasn't the case. It was a metabolic issue. Something just obviously was wrong. But just the whole experience, the losing the weight, that was obviously great. That was a big part of it. And my sister losing her was a big part of the motivation behind that. But just the whole experience of even the community that I've now met on TikTok. I mean, I love all the people. I mean, I just got goosebumps, honestly. I love all the people that I've met. And I say met, even though I haven't really met, but I've already made some just amazing relationships. And these people have been so genuine. And it's like, I told my husband, I said, I found my people. You know what I mean? Like, I really found people that relate to me and understand. When I was going through the trial, there was nobody. I didn't know anyone in the trial. No doctors knew anything about this medication. There was no other person to relate to. So I was really on an island by myself. And no matter what I was going through, good, bad, or indifferent, I mean, I could talk to somebody about it, but they weren't going to understand. They weren't going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going through that too. Or no, I'm not experiencing that, like we can do here. So I encourage people. I know a lot of people are not sharers. I feel like, everybody is different, but if you are on this journey, and you haven't connected with people, especially the TikTok community, I really encourage you to do that, because man, what a difference it has made just knowing other people's stories and knowing that there's people out there to truly support you and want nothing else from you.
Yeah. And I have definitely found the same thing, both over on TikTok, but especially over here on YouTube. Just such a tight knit group of people who are, we all have different experiences, different things that have led us to the point that we're at, but a universal experience, and universal shared experience of living life in larger bodies and living in bodies that are metabolically unwell, and having brands and labels put on us, because of that, even if it was just ourselves putting those labels on ourselves sometimes, because sometimes I think we are our hardest critics. But knowing now what we know now, it's just so great to be in community with just like-minded individuals spurring each other on. I totally agree with you. One thing that I'm curious about for you, so how close are you in maintenance now?
I am in maintenance, yes.
So do you mind sharing, because there's so many people that are in my community over here on TikTok who have been with, or on YouTube, who have been with me literally for like a year, almost a year and a half. And some of them, many of them, in fact, are in that maintenance era of their journey, or they're approaching it. Maybe just some tips, tricks on how to figure that out, or some of the things that you're doing. Maybe you're still trying to figure it out, but can you just share that part of your journey a little bit, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying, my highest weight at some point in my life was about 380 pounds, and that's where I stopped counting. So it was probably actually higher than that. When I started the trial, I was 342. When I ended the trial, I was 210.
Wow.
And then when I was able to get back on the medication, when it became available, I was able to lose another 76 pounds. So I've lost a total of 208 pounds and got down to 134, which I haven't weighed that since probably the third grade, in all honesty. I am still figuring out maintenance, as I think most of the people who have reached their goal weight are. And, there's not a lot of information out there yet. It's kind of trial and error. My initial thought process when I first started this medication was, I don't want to be on a medication for life. And nothing against being on a medication for life, but it just wasn't what I wanted for myself.
Right.
But I will tell you that my mindset has shifted a little bit. I think that there is a chance that's I am going to be on it, at least for longer term. I titrated back down to 2.5 and was spreading that out, sometimes even over 2 months, only one shot every 2 months.
Wow.
But I started to see the scale fluctuate, even though I was still maintaining those healthy habits and still eating well. I cannot tell you the last time I had fast food. I'm still sticking to what I was doing. But again, it's just a reminder in my mind that it's not all about that. It's about how my body is reacting. And so I am working with a doctor now who, has kind of told me that, is there hope for getting off of it at some point? Yes, in his opinion. But right now he feels like I need to stick to a weekly dose and let my body settle in for a little bit longer. Because again, how he explained it to me was, your body doesn't really know what's going on right now. You know, I spent 40 something years obese, not even overweight, obese. Now here I am in this like normal, I hate to even use that word, but normal size body. And it's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? You know, it wants to do what it's used to and go back to the way it used to operate. So I'm going to have to continue to just fight against that. And you know what? I've resigned myself to the fact that if that includes a weekly injection, I'm okay with that, because nothing else got me here. So I'm not gonna fight what worked.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and I think that many of us are kind of in that same. Ironically enough, I was in the same exact boat as you. As like I was somebody who just very much did not like to take medicine in any form. But you know, when you're struggling with chronic disease, you know, my wife has rheumatoid arthritis, for example. Her chronic medicine has changed her life and the trajectory of her life because of what it's been able to do for her. Like, I think that if I start acknowledging that I have a chronic disease in the form of diabetes and obviously obesity as well, and if I start looking at it from that perspective, that's what opened my mind to it as well. And it's been an absolute game changer as a diabetic, and even, you know, helping me get closer to where I want to be with the fight with obesity. Kayla had a good question. She wanted to know if all your late weight loss has been with Zepbound or MOUNJARO.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So the 208 pounds was strictly lost on MOUNJARO.
And I assume in the Surmount trial, you got all the way up to 15 milligrams.
Yes.
Did they tell you this, by the way, at the end? Were they like, yeah, you were on the real thing?
They didn't, but the nutritionist that we worked with during the trial told me from the get-go that you're going to know if you're on the medication or not. And it was kind of funny because 2 or 3 days after I took the first shot, I was like, you know, complaining to my husband. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get the medication. You know, only 1 in 4 people got the actual medication. The other 75% got a placebo.
Wow.
And of course, you know, my negative way of thinking was like, I didn't get it. And he was like, you know, give it a chance. You know, you maybe you did. And I'm like, nope, I know I didn't. And by day 3, I was at work, you know, my normal routine. And it was probably 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And it literally like a light bulb went off. And I was like, wow, I haven't thought about food today. I haven't eaten breakfast. I'm not thinking, oh, what's for lunch?
That was the first thing you noticed, was that you weren't thinking about food.
Yes.
Interesting.
That was it was literally like an epiphany. I mean, and then I was like, I even got up I remember getting up from my chair, asking my coworkers, I'm like, I haven't thought about food. I don't care about food today. You know, I mean, it was just such a weird experience. That was my first understanding of food noise. I mean, I've always had it, and now that I know what it is, I know what it is. But you know, food noise wasn't a thing we ever heard before. But that was my first true understanding of not sitting there wondering, okay, while I'm eating breakfast, what's for lunch? What's for dinner? Oh, maybe I'll stop, you know, through Starbucks and get, you know, a coffee and a donut, or, you know, coffee and a whatever. It literally it felt like chains breaking. I mean, it was such an incredible thing to not have to go through that anymore, and to really be like, oh my God.
Wow. That's so interesting, because I think part of it might be just like the male part of me that is just not. Thank you, by the way, for the super generous super sticker, Michelle, $49.99. I appreciate that. 10% of that will go to a paid member on YouTube or TikTok at the end of the month. So thank you very much, Michelle, for that. But one of the things that I never noticed was what the food noise was, right? And I had heard this being bantied about so many times on TikTok, on YouTube, food noise, food noise, food noise. And, you know, 85% of my followers, maybe closer to 90% of my followers early on, have all been females. And so very few dudes have followed my channel, because very few dudes comparatively have been on the medications. And so I didn't really understand what this concept of food noise was, or even that MOUNJARO was doing it for me until I got off MOUNJARO back in the fall of this year. I went on Ozempic for a little bit. Just because I had stalled out on the 15 milligram from a weight loss perspective, and I wanted to kind of reset. And so I went on Ozempic, and after the MOUNJARO had worked itself out of my system, it was like the volume went up to 80. And Ozempic was helping me like feel really full after I ate, because the delayed gastric emptying with Ozempic for me was pretty intense compared to MOUNJARO anyway. But the food noise turned on a ton. And, one of the things, I don't know if you have looked too much into this, but GLP-1 is what semaglutide is, a GLP-1 receptor agonist, MOUNJARO being a GLP-1 and GIP. This is a 5 times stronger GIP medication than it is a GLP-1. And my theory is that, or at least the way I always explain it, is this is like a stealthy ninja. It like, this is a blunt object in your stomach. You're like, ugh. But this is like, it does something in your brain quietly without you even like kind of knowing it's there. And then you're just like, I'm not thinking about food. And so to hear that was the first thing that you picked up on was super interesting to me. So as you see any questions there's some really good questions popping up in the chat. I mean, I see another one up there about whether you hit any stalls at any point on your journey, and like how long did they last and what did you do to get over them?
Yeah, so that was actually a question I noticed that I really did want to address, because that's one of the biggest questions that I've gotten from people over the 4 years. I definitely did hit several stalls, which in any weight loss journey is completely normal. Some people I know get very discouraged by that. But again, during the trial, we did have the tool of a nutritionist. So she was able to kind of help us along the way. And one of the things that she would say when we would hit a stall was that you have to shock your body. You have to do something different. So whether that meant, if you were exercising, whether that meant changing that up, doing more, doing less, changing whatever that routine was. For me, what worked in the beginning was I would take 2 or 3 days, and I always felt guilty doing this again, because the big person in me made me feel bad about it. But I would take 2 or 3 days and kind of eat. I called it eating crappy, and I don't mean gorging yourself or going overboard, but getting away from as healthy as I was eating for 2 or 3 days at the most. By day 4, I would go back to my normal routine of, lower carbs, higher protein, more fruits and veggies. And pretty much every time that broke the stall, and I would see the weight, start coming off again. I didn't have that many stalls during the trial. I think more so though, because I had a lot of weight to lose at that time. But as the smaller I got and the less weight I needed to lose, then I did experience more of those stalls. I took once I was off the trial and then on the medication on my own, I took several breaks from the medication altogether. The longest one was about 8 weeks. And then I started back at 2.5. And that every time worked, which I know is scary to people. And people have said to me, I'm so afraid to do that. I was afraid to do it too. Because I will tell you that even during just that 8 weeks, I gained about 5 or 6 pounds, which to most people is not a big deal. But to someone who struggles with obesity, you see that scale start to go the other way and
panic.
Yeah, exactly.
You start to panic. Or in my case, switch drugs.
Yeah. So, that was really hard for me to see that happening, but I just kept telling myself, be patient, that, the savior's on the way. And then like I said, every time I started back at 2.5, the weight loss would start again. From there, I never went above 10 after that.
Wow.
And so that's another thing I do like to always kind of, again, just this is my personal advice, not medical advice, but from my experience and from the other people that I've been able to talk to now over these last 4 years, if you can stay on the lower dose, whatever lowest dose you can stay on, and you're still experiencing good appetite suppression and you're still experiencing, the food noise being at bay, my suggestion is to stay on the lowest dose possible. Even before the shortage was a thing, the higher the dose, I kept telling people, once you get to 15, at least for now, there's nowhere to go from there. Right. So if you get to 15 and it's not working, then what do you do? Right. So, I mean, that's just, again, my personal opinion and been my experience. But if you're doing well on those lower doses, there's no reason to increase.
So just to dovetail on what Tara's saying here, I would be the do as I say, not as I do crowd, because I titrated up really fast. The shortages were at their peak when I was titrating up. So I skipped the 7.5. I skipped the 12.5. And I got to the 15 in a matter of like 4 months. And then I was on it. And, by the time I got to that 4 months, I had already maxed out what I had already got to my lowest weight that I ever was on tirzepatide. That was down 36 pounds, which was about I don't know, 11, 12% of my body weight. Which for a diabetic was sort of in the wheelhouse of where diabetics lose with the max amount of tirzepatide. I think it's like 14, 16, something in there, where non-diabetics are like 20, or there's 22, 23, 24. I can't remember. So in hindsight, if I could have stayed on that 15 milligram dose, maybe I would have lost. I actually went down as well because of migraines. So my whole journey has been an absolute roller coaster. But I would just echo what you're saying there. The lower the dose that you're able to achieve the weight loss that you're looking for on, the lower dose that will probably be required for maintenance. And that's not me saying that. That's doctors who have come on the show that have said that, and obviously some more experience from the real world here as well. I'm curious, just to kind of switch gears a little bit, with the clinical trial, did you have to sign like some sort of NDA in the process, or something that said you couldn't talk about it, or just out of curiosity?
No, I mean, we just had to sign our life away as far as, that they don't know much about this drug, yep. You could grow a tail. No, just kidding. But
did you?
I did not. Tail. I did not. No tail. As far as I know, a lot of people have asked about side effects, though. And, I feel like I've been very lucky. I had the typical, I don't really know too many people, if any, that haven't experienced, the gastrointestinal constipation, that kind of thing. That was a steady, one that kind of stayed with me throughout the process. I did get the sulfur burps a couple times, which I don't know if you haven't had those, you don't know what you're missing. That is not something that you want or anyone around you wants. Let me just put it like that. But luckily it was, I think it was on the 7.5 dose when that occurred, honestly, either 7.5 or 10. But it was a very short time. And hair loss, I did experience hair loss, but I will tell you again, I'm not a doctor, but I know plenty of people who have done, they've had bariatric surgery and lost a great amount of weight. I know people who have done programs like Optavia and lost a great amount of weight in a short amount of time. The hair loss is from rapid weight loss.
Right.
It's not from MOUNJARO. It's not from Ozempic. Right. It's from losing a lot of weight quickly. So that's another reason I tell people, like, hey, if they, they get upset that they're losing slowly, that's not a bad thing. An average, a great actually weight loss is half a pound. I think they say half a pound to 1.5 pounds a week. If that's what you're experiencing, you're doing great. And the other thing I always like to tell people is, don't compare your journey. Don't compare your journey to mine or anybody else's, because that takes away from your success and what you're doing. And we felt like a failure enough, people who have been battling obesity in their life, that, there's no reason to put yourself through that. If you woke up and you stepped on that scale and it stayed the same, that's a success. If you lost a pound, that's a success. If you went up a pound, guess what? That's a success, because you're still trying. You're still out there doing the things that you need to do, putting your best foot forward, and eventually it's going to come. But don't diminish your own journey by comparing it to somebody else's.
Yeah. Really difficult, but really great advice, especially difficult advice in the social media world for sure. Um,
Yes.
Another question that I'm curious about, switching topics, is your husband. So your husband gets the shaft on not getting to join the Surmount 1 trial. It's a double shaft because he finds out he has diabetes in the process. Poor guy. So your diabetic non-Surmount 1 trial husband, how's he doing?
Well, so he ended up starting
Okay.
which is semaglutide,
Yep.
while I was in the trial. And he lost like 30 or 40 pounds, and it was helping his A1C. But I've heard from a lot of people on that drug that they don't feel too good on it, that they have some stomach issues and things different from what a lot of the tirzepatide people have experienced.
Yeah.
And he stopped taking it.
Uh-huh.
And so
Semaglutide is harsh. It is very harsh. And I think one of my followers over here, he's always sharing news articles with me, which is super helpful. But one of the things that he shared with me was basically the way that semaglutide works is it sort of like drills a hole in the lining of your stomach to get your body to absorb the peptide. That's why you can't take it with food in your stomach or anything. It's like very difficult to take. It's a lot of rules with it. But yeah, it's just not the greatest way to consume a peptide, and semaglutide is harsher. Has he ever thought about MOUNJARO?
he has.
That's his own.
I don't know what
It's
his
his own
yeah.
journey.
I don't know what his hesitation is, honestly, because obviously he sees it works. I don't think it's that. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, to be honest with you. I've threatened to
Tell
again,
him.
probably
Tell him he's next week's guest.
okay. I've threatened to give him a jab when he's not looking, but
While he's sleeping.
yeah.
Awesome.
But I'll tell you one thing I will say about my husband, and I hope everybody has a partner like this. He loved me and accepted me at 342 pounds, and he loves me and accepts me at 134 pounds. He's been my biggest champion and my biggest support, and has just really, he's never, he's never tried to sabotage me or like, hey, come on, let's go out to eat, or let's eat this cake, or let's, oh, you can afford it. It's been, whatever you want to do, I will support you. And I couldn't ask for anything better than that.
That's awesome. There's nothing better than a great partner in life, and I have the same as well. So I've been very blessed as well in that department. I'm glad to hear that you have as well. Lots of really, really good stuff. Lots of really good information. I would really encourage. Let me pull your social media call outs up here again. Yeah, just a wealth. I mean, I think you could probably come on again at some point, and we could continue to talk about so many other things. I mean, there's just so many things like the clinical trial alone. I could probably ask you 100 questions about that experience. And there's some in the comments tonight that are actually in the clinical trials for retatrutide. So if I could be on one right now, I would love to be on the retatrutide trials. And for anybody who's watching this now or watching this in the future, one of the things that I do in the description or the show notes of all of these videos is I actually link at the bottom to clinicaltrials.gov, where you can enroll in these types of trials for retatrutide, for tirzepatide, and they're happening all the time. There's even some what we call no-lose trials, where you'll have like a semaglutide up against tirzepatide, or you'll have retatrutide, or something. And there's two medications, so you don't risk sort of what Tara risked, being the 3 out of 4 people who got placebo in the Surmount 1 study. She really was fortunate to be one of the 25% of the people in that study that got the medication. So one question that did pop up kind of in my head just about the clinical trials, when you were done with it, being that you were not diabetic and Zepbound was not out yet. Zepbound wasn't a thing. It was just MOUNJARO. It was a diabetes medication. Did they offer you some way to get on the medication after the trial ended, or is it just like it's done, you're on your own? Good luck.
Yeah, it was you're done. It's done. You're on your own. And honestly, I wish I could have talked to someone about that process, because they don't even follow up with you. Like, so the trial ended October of 2021. They brought us back 1 month later just to do a follow-up. So we were 1 month without medication. They weighed everybody again. And then that was it. They were done with you after that. And
you don't want to hear anything after that.
Nope, nope. They got their data.
Exactly. I got that tail.
Exactly.
They're like, la, 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 la.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I do think it would be helpful if they followed up, even just to see, how you made out, because again, it was 2 years, I think, a year at least before I could get on any type of medication after that. And I will say it was a struggle. That year was a struggle because I wasn't at my goal weight yet. While I had learned obviously some great habits, we know that that's not, 100% of the game here. So I struggled during that year. I gained probably between 12 and 15 pounds while I was still actively trying to lose weight. But it was just kind of that solidification of, again, you can do all the right things, but if you have something chemically wrong, biologically wrong, it's not going to do it. You can't do it on your own.
So am I getting these numbers generally right? After the trial was what, 72 weeks?
Yes.
So 72-week trial. In that 72 weeks, you lost 130 pounds?
132.
And then you were off it for a full year and only gained back, and I say only, it probably didn't feel like only, but you only gained back 12 of that 132 pounds in a year. That is phenomenal. That is really, I'm sure it was hard in that year for you to be off it, to see the scale moving, but really on 130 pounds, 12 pounds is like inflammation weight. Some people's weight fluctuates like that. That's pretty good.
I was actually, I beat myself up a little bit in the beginning because, again, I think that whole mindset of, I'm a failure, I'm failing, I can't do this.
You're still hardwired to beat yourself up.
Yes. But, as the time went on, I was actually, I'm like, you know what? This really isn't that bad. I think for me, the hardest part was I was so close to being in Wonderland. And I wanted to get there so bad. And I did. Within the first couple months, I did get there on my own. But, once the medication was fully out of my system, then it was like an uphill climb. And I was like, man, I can't stay there. And I'll be honest with you, I even now struggling to stay at my lowest weight at the 134 pounds. I fluctuate 3-4. But
you're back to the weekly injections. You're not going what was you said 8 weeks, right? Once every 8 weeks. What dose were you taking then, and now what are you maintaining on, if you don't mind?
So I was only doing 2.5 at that time, and that was really what I wanted to do in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'll do this, but I want to be on the lowest dose. So I was maintaining and even still losing, and that when the scale started jumping up. The panic, I can't even tell you what that feels like. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I think it's worth noting, I can't get the medication anymore, at least not the brand. And it's not because of the shortage.
Yeah.
I can't, being 134 pounds, people are not prescribing it to me for obesity. I'm not diabetic. People are like, oh, well, you're on the clinical trial. Don't they give it to you for free? No, they don't. They don't even, they're not
bit.
Right. After the fact, they don't give it to you for free. So, I was kind of,
they can at least tell you the closet they keep it in, like with a wink and a nod.
Yeah, no, there was nothing. It was like, Tara who,
Yeah, we don't know you.
Yeah. So, but I am back now to weekly injections. And today I just did my first 5 milligram.
Okay.
So I'm going to, the advice of the doctor that I'm working with now was to, maybe even continue to titrate up a little bit, only as necessary. But my goal is to stay maybe at like 7.5, see how I do there. If I'm maintaining at least, my weight, then I'll stay there for a while. But, it's his thought process that I'm probably going to be on it, if not forever, for a while, for probably a year, 2 years. And we can see then where my body, where I feel okay.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot of things going for you. That second time around, only going up to 10. So kind of getting to where you wanted to be. We were talking about this a little bit before the show when Dr. Daniel Rosen, who is a world-renowned bariatric surgeon out of New York, he came on the show a few months ago, and he, what I love about Dr. Rosen is he's not at all, as a bariatric surgeon, not at all intimidated by these medicines, sees them very much as a useful tool in his practice. And what he talks about is something we talk about on the show tonight a little bit, climbing the rungs of the ladder slowly, right? This isn't what they did in the clinical trials, but that's because they have to do something universal, like that they can give out and that they can test. But what anecdotally he's seen in his practice, and I would say this is true across the board from all the doctors I've spoken to, is you climb that ladder as slow as possible, milk each dose for as much weight as you can lose. Because if you can reach your goals at a lower dose, you'll need a lower dose and probably have a better chance of not needing medication to maintain what you've lost. If you have to get all the way to the 15, and there's no problem if you do, right? Everybody's body is different and everybody responds to the medication different. But if you have to get all the way up to the 15 to lose it all, the more likely you're going to need a dose, at least a dose at a minimum, but probably a higher dose. They say right now, Eli Lilly says that the Zepbound maintenance doses are 10, 12.5, and 15. I think I have that right. Somebody will correct me in the comments if I'm not, but I believe that the upper three doses are the, in fact, actually, I think maybe it was the 5, 10, and 15. Maybe it wasn't the incremental doses. I can't remember, but it was the upper doses, the therapeutic level doses. So certainly most people that get up to the top will need a therapeutic dose to maintain per what we've seen in the clinical trials, but you're bucking the trend. So that's awesome. I don't want to keep you hostage too much longer. This has been great. I know it's an hour later where you're at. This has been a pleasure. I hope that you'll come back and do this again sometime. And it's just been a pleasure to get to know you. I'm excited to follow your content because I think you're new to me. I'm new to you. So I'm excited to follow your journey a little bit. Maybe we'll see you pop up on the next morning show that I scroll through in the morning. You're not only the OG, but you're like the face of the GLP-1 community on television. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, that definitely was not my my idea or my thought process, but I will say that it's very humbling to be able to represent anybody other than myself. I do try to do that in a positive manner, and I just think that the more we speak on these things, the more we get the information out there, the more we share it with the public, the better off we're going to be. And, I've absolutely enjoyed thoroughly. I can't believe it's, we've been on here like well over an hour now. It's been just a great experience. I love what you're doing. Keep doing it because again, you're bringing the information to the masses and you do it in such a fun way. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have you here. You're welcome back anytime. I hope we'll do it again. And I hope you have a great
Absolutely.
night. Thanks for joining me tonight, Tara.
Thank you, everybody. And help me get to 5,000 followers on TikTok.
Yes. I'll throw that up there again. Make sure that you follow Tara at Tackling Tara, not only on Instagram, but on TikTok as well. If you're over there, make sure you give her a follow. We'll make sure we get you there. Have
Good
a great
night, everybody.
Night.
Thank you.
See ya. Tara Rothenhofer, the OG. The OGist, maybe, of all the Mounjarians from the Surmount 1 trial. That was awesome. I probably could have asked her 1,000 more questions, especially I'm especially interested in how the clinical trials work and the ins and outs of that. We've got some other members of the channel here who are part of current clinical trials. We've got some in the community who actually administer some of these clinical trials. So in the future, there will definitely be more conversations about this. But two things that really excited me about that conversation. One was just a teaser for what Michelle's going to be bringing to the channel in the coming weeks in maintenance discussions, because that is something that we've been woefully lacking over here. So I am super, super excited to not only have been able to talk to Tara a little bit about what maintenance looks like tonight, but for the future of the channel, incorporating some of that with Michelle. Clokey reminds me that we're close to 7,500 subs on YouTube. So if you're here tonight for the first time, make sure that you hit that subscription button. It doesn't cost you anything. It just subscribe, and then you'll see my videos when you pop on YouTube. So hit that like button. That helps to send this out into the community as well. So yeah, thank you for those who gave gifts tonight. There were some really generous gifts tonight. So thank you for those who gave gifts. Donna, Sue the Dude, Sabrina, Michelle, Khan, Michelle Hess. The Michelle's coming in strong with the super chat tonight. Thank you very much for your generosity tonight. Again, 10% of that going to go back to a member next week, a paid member on YouTube or TikTok. So thank you so much for the generosity. One of the things that I've been doing on my TikTok lives lately, and one of the things that I want to start doing on the end of this show, this is Holy Week. So if you are a practicing Christian, it is a special week to just reflect on the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Without the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the whole faith crumbles. So it's a special week to think about a risen Savior, a living Savior. And for those of you who are Christians, I just want to say happy Holy Week to you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Have a great Holy Week. God bless you all. Thank you for being the best part of what I do here on the pen with Man on the Mounjaro. Y'all are such a special group. I appreciate you so much, and we will catch you next week.